Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us for our webinar today. Our webinar is entitled Workforce Recruitment and Training Solutions for Childcare Employers. And I know we have a nice representation of the apprenticeship ecosystem with us today, as well as people who are quite actively engaged in workforce development, recruitment, and training strategies. We are delighted to be able to sponsor this great conversation around worker shortages in the childcare sector. I'm Edna Primrose, and I am one of the business development and partnerships lead for the Maryland Apprenticeship Connector. Many of you may have heard of MAC, or Maryland Apprenticeship Connector, and basically we are a consortium that is born out of a grant from the Department of Education, the Maryland State Department of Education, to help build this apprenticeship ecosystem I referred to. Our role is to be a connector with high schools, community colleges, employers, and other stakeholders to help to boost our number of apprenticeship offerings for high school juniors and seniors. We're also huge proponents of the apprenticeship model in its form. So we're delighted to have you here today. And we're also delighted to have the Maryland State Childcare Association as our co-sponsor. So thank you so much, Christina Pusch, our Executive Director, for serving as a co-sponsor.
My pleasure, Edna. Thank you so much for having us at this important forum. We appreciate the opportunity to partner with this opportunity.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you to please mute your phone if it is not muted, and we will just jump right in. We have a distinguished panel today, again, representatives from MSCCA. We have Hartford Community College, Howard Community College, Baltimore City Public Schools, Baltimore County Public Schools, and we have the Maryland Department of Labor. So I'm going to start with some level setting, and I'll ask Stacy to go ahead and pull up our PowerPoint. Basically, the reason I'm doing this is because many people are not familiar with the apprenticeship model. Traditionally, it has been primarily focused in the construction and manufacturing trades. But what we're going to be talking about today is how that model is actually applicable and replicable in any sector. All right, next slide. So the Blueprint for Maryland's Future sets a pretty ambitious goal for curating this apprenticeship ecosystem. The goal is that 45% of high school graduates will leave school, will graduate with an apprenticeship completion or an industry recognized credential by the 2030-31 school year. So at the time that we received the grant last year, the state was somewhere between 3 and 8%. So we have a whole host of people who are really working to build opportunities for employers to enhance their talent pipeline while also exposing high school students to in-demand career paths. Next slide. So what is an apprenticeship? An apprenticeship is a structured program. It combines on-the-job training with classroom instruction, and it's a really great model because apprentices not only learn the critical elements of a position, they also get the theoretical and related instruction behind it. So they learn the building blocks, and then they get to put it into great practice with an employer. Also, apprentices are paid while they learn, so they earn while they learn, and the wages are progressively increased as the skill level increases with the apprentice. It's really pretty wonderful, and it is a great way for employers to enhance their talent pipeline because you're getting employees on the ground floor. Many apprentices do become full-time employees and then go on to the defined career path. In addition to that, there are a number of different types of that sponsor apprenticeships, including employers. It could be labor unions, other organizations. We have intermediaries that help to steward the process. And again, the Maryland Department of Labor is the regulatory body for apprenticeship. So you've got some acronym soup there. You may have heard of Youth Apprenticeship or YA. It's also called an AMP, Apprenticeship Maryland program, and that specifically speaks to students who are juniors and seniors in high school. If you've heard of STA, a school to apprenticeship is an apprenticeship program that begins in the high school and then continues after the student graduates. So it's a great bridge to create that opportunity for a position in an in-demand occupation. Registered apprenticeship happens after high school. Again, we have that bridge that can occur with STA. We have a number of registered apprenticeship sponsors, and we'll hear from a couple of them today. Same thing, the progression is usually 1 to 4 years in a number of occupations. On-the-job training is exactly what it says. You're learning with an employer in the real world. And related instruction is that theory and practice that I described earlier. Our school systems are also called LEAs, our local education agencies. And we have the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Council, which is our state-based council that approves these apprenticeship applications. The Maryland Department of Labor is the regulatory body for the apprenticeship programs in the state, and the Maryland State Department of Education handles all of the related instruction and the academic components. Next. So I have already described some of the features. Again, paid employment, where students earn while they learn and the wages go up over time. I described the OJT, the classroom instruction, where you've got that nice balance between what students need to know and what students need to know how to do. We have a credentialing, where the apprentices earn an industry recognized credential, which is fantastic, and it makes them more employable and more valuable to the employer. Again, the program duration really varies depending on the industry sector, and it is applicable to a wide range of industries, both traditional and non-traditional. Next slide. The standard apprenticeship model has 4 components. I've gone over the related instruction and on-the-job training. I didn't talk about the sponsor. I just mentioned an employer. So the employer is the one who provides the job to apprentices. They oversee all of the training. They assign mentors to help shepherd the apprentice throughout the training period, provide the technical instruction, provide that hands-on training, and are a guide and advisor throughout the apprentice's experience. An intermediary I haven't touched on too much, but those organizations play a critical role in connecting organizations, kind of like MAC. MAC is an intermediary. They can advance the design, registration, and implementation of programs. In general, intermediaries may also be the ones that keep the books. They may be the ones that help to manage all the administrative processes of running an apprenticeship program. Sometimes intermediaries can be sponsors as well, where you have an umbrella organization that serves as a sponsor of the apprenticeship, and then their members are partners in it, and the umbrella organization manages all of the administrative pieces. Next slide. So taking a look at childcare, because that's what we're focusing on today, let's just go over a couple of numbers that talk about how childcare has shown up where we are so far in the state of Maryland. So in the last school year that has just ended, congratulations for all of you. Yes, 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 yes. 17% of our youth programs were involved in education, and that is over 1,000 youth apprentices. So we see the numbers starting to increase. We had 179 students who worked in a number of different areas around early childhood education and education. And the Maryland Department of Labor has about 60 employers in the education classification that are now approved for youth apprenticeship programs. And about 45 of those 60 are private childcare and education providers. So that's very encouraging. Next slide. Here is a chart that shows you the top 30 youth apprenticeship occupations, as well as the wages associated with those occupations according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So it's really cool to see childcare worker and early childhood educator among those top 30 occupations. As you can see, there is some momentum that is building, and there is also room to grow. Also, you can see on the chart that there are a diverse array of occupations that students are engaging in across the state. It's really exciting, and I think it's also a great opportunity to expose them to the career choices before them. At the same time, think of all the employers in these particular industries they are helping to build their own talent pipeline by hiring youth apprentices and registered apprentices. Next slide. So the case for employer change, as I mentioned, is really getting ahead of the curve in terms of building that pipeline, changing the workforce dynamics, being able to address worker shortages. By the way, there was a report that was put out by the Chamber of Commerce a few weeks ago that talked about the state of Maryland as well as other states, and mentioned that in our state, there are 33 workers available for every 100 jobs that are unfilled. So we know that there are critical worker shortages across the state. And we're going to hear from Chris in a little bit to talk specifically about childcare. Of course, this aligns with career readiness goals set forth in the blueprint. And again, those kinds of goals align with the needs that employers have. You get to have students and apprentices on the ground floor, get to develop them according to the needs that you have, and you're creating a great opportunity to build the employee base that you have. Next slide. All right, here's the good stuff. We're about to introduce our panel. Again, we're delighted to have Chris Pusch with us this afternoon from the Maryland State Childcare Association. We have Tony Wohlers from Hartford Community College, Bronwyn Bates from Howard Community College, Alicia Fales from Baltimore County Public Schools, and Logan Dean from the Maryland Department of Labor. So I'm going to start with Chris. And I'd like each of you to introduce yourselves, and maybe talk a little bit about how you came to be in this space, and then we'll go on with a couple of questions, and there will be a Q&A. As we wait for Chris, let me just ask if you would be so kind as to put your name, email address, and organization in the chat so that we can just get a sense of who's in the room. We know who's registered, but the other participants may not be familiar with your organization or know where you're from. So let's just do that so people can get a sense of the great diverse representation we have. So Chris, let me just start by having you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then ask you, what are you seeing in the workforce space around childcare? Can you touch a little bit on some of the gaps that you all have experienced, and also some of the strategies that you're implementing to not only address the gap, but to really enhance the childcare sector? Thanks.
So of course, thanks again. And I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Christina Pusch, Executive Director of the Maryland State Childcare Association. I'm also co-chair of the Office of Childcare Advisory Council and a State Early Childhood Advisory Council member. And I am happy that we are bringing childcare to the forefront and connecting the dots, because as Edna said, this forum that we're in is about connecting, and childcare is connected to the economy, and we need to look at it in that way. It's an equity imperative as well, and childcare is technically the essential workforce behind the workforce, any workforce, right? Because even if, for example, childcare may not seem important to every Marylander, but it impacts everyone, and it does that because even if you don't have children or your children are grown, when you're in the workforce and people don't come to work because they don't have childcare, or they aren't as productive because they don't have consistent, affordable quality childcare, this impacts the productivity and impacts the workforce, and it impacts co-workers. And so businesses have, as Edna was mentioning previously, the Chamber of Commerce in Maryland had made childcare one of their top priorities in their reports from this past year, and were actually testified with alongside of us in the general session on some of the bills I'm going to share to help talk about the workforce issues that we are experiencing, not just in Maryland, but across the country. And so I do want to give a little bit of, for those of you that like data or information, that childcare, as I said, impacts everyone. And we had a pre-pandemic, we had over 8,000 childcare businesses across the state, caring for almost 200,000 children, supporting the workforce, right? And so, and prior to the pandemic, we did some work. Our partners at Maryland Family Network did some research, and we use this research a lot in our advocacy, sharing that families that have disruption, so just 49% of Marylanders have parents have children under the age of 5, right? So, but when they have disruptions in childcare, it impacts, and we lose money. So we're counting our losses in many different ways. And so 14.7% of the Maryland parents with children under the age of 5 reported long-term disruptions in their past issues with part-time childcare and finding full-time and moving from full-time to part-time work. And also 24.7 reported that they forego additional educational opportunities and promotions due to childcare conflicts. And that these short-term and long-term disruptions, whether it's sick leave and those types of things, cost Maryland's economy $2.41 billion. And so that's an economic issue. That is why it's important to talk about ways that we should be focusing our efforts. And apprenticeships are an excellent way to, and a very successful model to consider workforce issues. And so the childcare workforce has suffered a critical shortage. And as you saw when Edna put up the wages, wages is one of the biggest drawbacks and barriers for the childcare workforce. As you can see, the average salary was around $33,000. That's barely above minimum wage at $15 an hour for a 40-hour work week. So it is very difficult to recruit and retain childcare workforce, especially now post-pandemic when there's a lot of competition, and with our rolling out the blueprint, and we have, our pre-K and the expansion of mixed delivery. These are all falling into reasons that we're very concerned about childcare and the workforce. And one other point that I do want to make with regards to that is that parents don't work 6.5 hours. That most of them that I know don't work 6.5 hours a day. So even when your child goes to school, you still need childcare, whether it's before or after school, whether it's, for siblings and such. So we do need to really be focused on childcare. So thank you again for bringing this important topic to the forefront. And I would say that the barriers definitely include the compensation, and that's why the apprenticeship model is extremely important, because it does provide the ability to have quality training, as well as the compensation and benefits that may help us to resolve some of those critical workforce shortages. And so a lot of these women who are the ones who typically are losing the opportunities or disruption of their work, their work and their workforce is primarily women. And so primarily women work in the childcare workforce as well. If you want to, I want to talk a little bit about some ways that we are trying to find through legislation that we've been able to be successful in hopefully providing additional childcare workforce, as well as supporting the childcare industry that supports all of the workforce. So if you could go to the next slide real quick, I'll just mention a couple of those. So House Bill 662, what we did was we lowered the minimum age to 18 as opposed to 19, which helps with that gap when you graduate from college and gives you the opportunity for transitioning into maybe a lead teacher, which is what is required in our COMAR regulations in our state. But it doesn't take away any of the qualifications or standards. It just offers the opportunity for the age, which is really important, because that again helps for people that are coming out of high school that are maybe in the CTE programs. It also helps in the apprenticeship model. So it gives us that career ladder, which allows it to begin a little bit earlier when and if necessary. And so that was very successful. We had the Women's Legislative Caucus behind it. And so we're excited to see if that will help for the critical workforce shortage as our industry continues to face. If you can go to the next slide. Also House Bill 600 and Senate Bill 500. Senate Bill 500 passed independently, and House Bill was rolled into another bill, House Bill 1441, which I'll talk just a little bit about. But the Senate Bill 500 is a opportunity for a workforce, connecting to the workforce in a way that we have a very strong initiative in Maryland that allows people that are working in childcare, early childhood, to go to college and I know Tony will talk a little bit more about this and some of my colleagues today, but you can go to college, what's called the Childcare Career Professional Development Fund, and it's free. The books are free. You can get an early childhood education degree, special ed, elementary ed. And so this is a wonderful opportunity and initiative, but the service hours that were required previously upon graduation were only 10 hours per week. So this bill increased the service hours in order for us to have a qualified, quality staff working back in the field of early childhood and childcare to the 20 hours, which will help build the workforce. As I said, 10 hours doesn't help when families have to work. So we need a workforce that is able to work at the minimum of 20 hours or more. It also expanded opportunities for native language coursework and degrees. So we have a lot of educators and diverse women working in this field that their first language isn't English. And so this was a way to expand the workforce to those educators who can learn more quickly in their own language. And there are some colleges across the country that do this, and we want to bring that to Maryland and offer and open that up for this particular child care career professional development fund. So that bill passed, and we're excited because we believe that will also speak to some of the workforce issues. Additionally, childcare is hosted in numerous ways. It is in family childcare, which is licensed and registered in our state, and it is in center-based childcare, nursery schools, many before and after school programs. So one of the other bills that passed was Growing Family Childcare Opportunities Pilot. That was a pilot that grew into a much across the state into 3 regions. It started out in 1. And so what we were able to do this year was codify that in law and make it established where it will be supported to continue to expand, because we lost over 1,000 childcare programs since COVID, and we are not rebounding at a rate that most industries are. Again, for numerous barriers, including compensation and the ability, to be paid a living wage. And so this is why the apprenticeship model is important. And these are why these bills are important to continue. So this also has some funding, which is hard to get attached to it. The next slide. One of the larger bills that we did get passed through the Ways and Means Committee, and then as it was crossed over to the EEE Committee, Education, Environment, and I forget the last. I forget the last one. But what we did was as Edna's talked a lot about the blueprint and for Maryland's future, and the pillar 3, I believe that you're focusing on here. Pillar 1 is early childhood, right? And it has to do with the foundation. And so we looked at the barriers to participating in a mixed delivery system of private community-based childcare programs that already have a lot of 3 and 4-year-olds, and transitioning them into the ability to participate as a public pre-K deliverer as well, along with our public schools, because we need each other to do this with the blueprint. And so we were able to look at some of those barriers along with the Accountability Implementation Board that's part of the blueprint law. And we were able to take their recommendations and create some new pathways. And so, for example, sort of like an apprenticeship model, we have a pathway that, we have an assistant teacher that has to have certain requirements, including experiential learning, and a lead teacher for public pre-K with experiential learning that was added. These are alternative pathways that were not being used. And that's what apprenticeships do. They build out those types of models. And so we hope to that this bill will help the childcare community and the blueprint pillar 1 to expand that public pre-K so that more families have opportunities to participate at both levels, both with the pre-K or the childcare programs that offer before and after school, that you can braid that funding. Because one thing that I did want to mention is that there's a childcare scholarship program that businesses should be extremely interested in sharing with their employers. And I know there's a toolkit. I know Montgomery County has done a lot of work in this, but employers need to know that what is offered for childcare, there is a scholarship, if you will. It's a subsidy, but we call it a scholarship and branded it that way in Maryland because it is a child's first scholarship. And so if employers know that this, and their employees know that they can access this funding, they apply for it. We've done a lot of work to increase the eligibility for families. So a family of 4 making $91,000 has the opportunity for free childcare. That's important to employers to share those benefits with, with their employees, because that will be helpful in finding a quality program in their community that is open the hours that they need to work as well. The last slide is, I'm going to parlay that into the rest of our panel to talk about, but the next slide after that, sorry. So last year that passed the Education Workforce Shortage Act, we were able to take the certification requirements for the community-based programs out of the pre-K requirements for a lead teacher. So this House Bill 1441 I just spoke about is just piggybacks on that and expands the alternative pathways for more people to get into the field and be recognized for their experiential work and still have rubrics and ways to measure the quality that's being provided for our children. But I did want to also mention the assistance hubs that was part of this bill, House Bill 1441, which I think plays nicely into our next guests that are going to participate. And that is that we need to create, based on this bill, some important hubs, both centralized and regional hubs throughout the state to support and coordinate partnerships. And that's what apprenticeships are. They're the ability to, help the workforce and build out the important systems. And we need to partner on that together. And I know that we have some successful models that we're going to talk a little bit about today with community colleges and others that I think is going to be extremely important to make sure that the childcare industry is aware of these, as well as the employers, that these opportunities are out there, and we need to expand that footprint in Maryland to be successful and create a stronger system. And so I'd like to yield to the rest of my group to share more about that.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Chris, for really just painting that picture from a comprehensive standpoint. And I think that the way that you champion the sector, the workforce, families and communities really is very inspiring. And thank you so much for the context around the legislation that has also happened to boost the efficacy of the ecosystem. So thank you for that. So next, I'm going to ask Tony to introduce himself and talk about some of the innovative approaches that they're doing at Hartford Community College. And Stacy, you can go ahead and bring up that slide. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for the invitation. Really appreciate it. I'm honored. And Chris, thank you so much for your input and overview. Always inspiring because you really bring it home. The economic impact. Of course, there's so much more going on, obviously, right? But that's something everybody can understand, how much impact there is on our economy and things like that. So my name is Tony Waters. I'm the Dean of the Behavior and Social Sciences here at Hartford Community College. I'm kind of in a unique position as a dean here. Usually deans of behavioral social sciences don't do what I do, I think at least. So for one, I have an early learning center in my division. So I kind of see firsthand what it means, recruiting employees and keeping them based on the salaries we pay. There's a lot of work needs to be done in this area for sure, so that they also feel valued and appreciated. The other kind of unique area for me, of course, is the apprenticeship, childcare apprenticeship in particular, of course. So let me take you on a brief journey. This kind of started for us more than 2 years ago. One of my faculty, Laura Hutton, she was in one of her affinity groups meeting, and somebody asked a question and said, who is interested in establishing a childcare apprenticeship program at your community college? There was a long silence first. And then Laura Hutton, she raised her hand and said, I'm interested in Hartford Community College can do this. And that's where it all started. So Laura Hutton took the initiative and then collaboratively developed the program with other faculty in my division, teacher education, of course, and also working with our continuing education workforce development division as well, because as you know, there are, of course, implications here as far as labor board standards and things like that. So the journey began with a lot of paperwork, because you have to complete the paperwork for the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Council, which of course falls under the Department of Labor. And completing that paperwork was not always easy because of a lot of language in there we as academics don't necessarily understand. But we muddled through it. And of course, we had our expertise over in continuing education who helped us, Matt Bailey's for one, to get this done. And then eventually they had the hearing, right? You have to go to the public hearing to defend your program. It's like defending a dissertation almost, I hear. And the first round actually did not go that well. They had questions and they wanted to make us corrections. And so we did. We never give up here at Harvard Community College. We never give up. We returned with the answers they wanted. And so it got approved in 2022 in June. And so that meant by that time, of course, we knew that those apprentices need to complete 3,000 hours, including 257 hours in terms of classes. So we had to build the curriculum. And what you see on the right there, 1A, 1, 2A, and 2B, and 3 basically represents different buckets, if you will, of classes, right? You might not be able to read it, but including all children, the American with Disability Act, the young child, and so forth, right? So this program, which is basically an online program, requires our apprentices to take these courses. They're basically divided up into 6 months. The total is 18 months. So 2A and 2B is kind of 6 months, right? 1 is 6 months, and then 3, of course, is basically 6 months too. And then they go through these classes, they complete assignments, obviously, and of course, there is an instructor. So when we started this in January 2023, yes, oh wait, 2023 with cohort one, we had an instructor going through this. And then as we progressed, we added more cohorts pretty much every 6 months. So at this point, I'm very happy to report that we are already on cohort 4. Cohort 4 will start next month on July 1st, to be precise. And we can admit a maximum of 25 apprentices for each cohort. Now you might wonder, are we reaching that number? No, because there's an interview process, there's a ranking process. So it's a very rigorous process we have to go through based on the labor board standards. So there's an interview that needs to be conducted. That's done with an advisory board and the coordinator of the apprenticeship program. And it is very time consuming. And so although we might have 30, 35 applicants, not all of them will get into the program because of that. So the first cohort started actually with 23 or 24, I want to say. Then we had some attrition, of course. And the same kind of basically also occurred with the other cohorts as well. So what do you get out once you have put all that work in, right? So you work in the field, obviously, and you also take those classes at the same time. Once you're done with the classes and everything, you're basically ready to be a lead teacher or director of a small or childcare center, basically, right? Those are the major outcomes. But there's much more to it, of course, too. So because you might be wondering about the funding of all of this. So on the one hand, we work with the labor board. On the other hand, we also work with the Maryland State Department of Education. And it has been the Maryland State Department of Education, our other partner, who has been funding the childcare apprenticeship program so far. And we're working with them to sustain the program. So at this point, what that means is that the apprentices, they take the courses for free. They don't have to pay anything. It's all paid by the Maryland Department of Education. So it's a great benefit for them. And you can see also why, because just look at the population of many of those apprentices. They often come from very backgrounds. They need that financial support to be successful. And that's what we wanted to kind of make sure that they have. So from that point of view, it has been very successful. But as Chris also pointed out, the apprenticeship obviously is a non-credit program. But we also have built bridges between the non-credit and the credit program, because we have a childcare education degree basically here at Harvard Community College. So as they're completing those courses, you see listed here basically, these courses translate into credits on the degree program side basically. about 18, I want to say at this point. And then plus, Chris talked about the CCPDF, the Childcare Career Professional Development Fund. That is a great program, and we now have linked our childcare apprenticeship program to CCPDF. So what we basically do is we tell the apprenticeship early on, look, if you're interested continuing on with the degree program, here's another opportunity that will help you from a financial perspective and give you guidance, because there's a coordinator associated with the CCPDF. They guide you through the program, and it's also paid. And at the end, of course, you will actually end up with an actual degree in childcare education. So that is a very powerful pathway, people, that we have created to kind of facilitate that success. So far we have been very successful. Our first cohort 1, they're going to graduate this June. So in a few days, actually end of June. Have we had challenges? Yes. There's a lot of compliance going on, paperwork, tracking data. There's also attrition going on within the courts and so forth. It's a very labor-intensive program. But I have a lot of people who have a lot of passion and a good heart to facilitate success. Thank you, Edna.
And
Thank you.
can I mention
Yes.
something? I just want to make sure, Tony, that everyone that's on the call, because there's different sectors here represented, but even though you're from Hartford Community College, this is a state registered statewide apprenticeship. So,
Okay.
and it's online. So if that's the case, anywhere, anyone, if you have a childcare program, you want to send them or work through Hartford Community, that is a great opportunity throughout the state.
Thank you very much, Chris. We have apprenticeship throughout the state at this point. They're not all in Hartford County. They're all over the state. Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well said, Tony, and thank you so much for that, Chris. And so speaking of innovation, let's also hear from Howard Community College and hear from Bronwyn around their work there with their cohort as well as their employer partners.
I'm not able to hear.
I cannot hear you.
I think are you muted there?
Check your speaker settings, but maybe go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we go to Logan, and then we'll come back to you in case you need to go out and come back in. No worries. All right. So let's go ahead and hear from Logan Dean from the Maryland Department, and then we'll hear from Alicia Fales with Baltimore County Public Schools.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here today. So my name is Logan Dean. As Edna mentioned, I am program manager for the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Program here at the Department of Labor. We are Maryland's state registration agency for apprenticeship, which means that we have oversight authority over all registered and youth apprenticeship programs across the state. And primarily our function is to oversee the health and safety of Maryland's apprentices and help promote and build quality programs here in the state. You've gotten to hear already from Tony about what it looks like to start and operate an apprenticeship program. I'm just going to take you through really quickly in 4 steps what it actually takes to get one off the ground and on the books as an official registered sponsor, official program. So we have a network of fantastic apprenticeship navigators that are state employees and that are fanned out all across Maryland. Many of them are on the call here today. You'll see some folks in the chat who put that they're an apprenticeship navigator, and they represent all different areas of the state, and they serve specific geographic areas. So the first step really, if you're thinking about building an apprenticeship program, is to reach out to your local navigator and start having some conversations specific to your employers, to your business, and to your location, because we can help connect you with some local options, whether you're looking at partnering with high schools, community colleges, existing programs like Tony's. We can help make some of those connections and help kind of figure out whether registered apprenticeship, youth apprenticeship, what's going to be the right fit for you. Our navigators also hopefully will ease a little bit of that paperwork headache that comes with registering a program, because we will help write out those, we call them standards of apprenticeship. So it's a big, long packet of documents that serve as kind of the foundation for your program. So Edna had that wonderful slide about the different components of an apprenticeship, your wages, on-the-job training, related instruction. So we memorialize all that for you in your standards, and that serves as kind of a contract between you, your employers, and your apprentices. So we'll help build all that out. The approval process, which was also touched on today, every program in Maryland is vetted and standardized by a body called the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Council. The council, or MATC as we call them, is made up of industry experts from all across Maryland, all across the economy, from construction to education to IT, cybersecurity. And their job is to really make sure that every program that we approve and every program that the state puts its stamp on is of quality and is safe and is going to train professionals for the occupation that they're trying to go into. So your program will be vetted by the council, and your navigator will actually sort of serve as your attorney in front of the council. So they'll represent you, they'll present for you, they'll help answer some of the tough questions you're going to get from the council and help get you through that process. The council approval process happens every 60 days in Maryland. So it's the second Tuesday of every odd numbered month. So the next one is in July, and then September, November, on and on. So you can essentially build a program or change a program at any time on that 60-day cycle. And your navigator will help you with filing the paperwork, getting on the agenda, and what to expect in front of the council. Once you have that stamp of approval, you are good to go to start hiring apprentices, start bringing them on, folding them into your program, offering them training, and incorporating them into the apprenticeship that you're starting to run. Our staff will be in constant contact to make sure that everything's going smoothly for you, that you don't have any questions about how the program works, what to expect, how to keep records. And we do a formal review every other year. So the labor staff will come back out and we'll open your books, we'll look at your apprentices, look at their progress, see how people have moved through the program, see how wages have gone. It gives us a way to kind of keep a pulse on the state's economy, on the apprenticeship programs that we have out there, but it also helps us assist you as a sponsor or as an employer with figuring out, ways where we can minimize paperwork, minimize administrative barriers, and also if you're looking for additional supports, funding, scholarships, partnerships, those reviews are an opportunity to get that assistance as well. Keeping on the topic of assistance, we can jump to my next slide. So we do have a few resources available through the state of Maryland to support apprenticeships specifically. And this chart here kind of lays out some of what those are. For those of you that are private tax-paying corporations, private tax-paying businesses, there is a credit for apprentices. So the Maryland Apprenticeship Tax Credit, it's up to $3,000 per registered apprentice that you employ, or $1,000 per youth apprentice. So that's the Apprenticeship Maryland program. Those are those high school student apprentices. You can claim this for a new apprentice who's in their first year. So you can only claim it one time per apprentice. And the maximum value is going to be $15,000 per taxpayer. So that's per business. And it is a credit against your Maryland state income tax liability. So again, if you're a nonprofit, if you are a public institution, unfortunately, the credit won't be a huge benefit for you, but it is a great benefit for those private organizations, private institutions. The Sponsor Apprenticeship Incentive Reimbursement, or SAIR, S-A-I-R, is another fund that we operate through our office here in the Division of Workforce Development. It is up to $2,500 of reimbursement against the cost of instruction. So if you're thinking about community college coursework, maybe you're using like a third-party CDA certification that's eligible. You could be doing your own proprietary training that carries a cost as an employer. Any of those things that you can have a documented reimbursable cost for, we can help eat $2,500 of that for that first year brand new apprentice coming in. Building off of that, there's another program called Maryland Business Works, which is open for employers who have fewer than 500 employees. So Maryland Business Works is a small business incentive, and it is up to $4,500 per apprentice. And that is going to be, it's a matching 50-50 assistance. So $4,500, that would be for like a $9,000 training. So basically we can pay half of the cost of that training up to $4,500 with a cap of $40,000 per business. Maryland Business Works is a great asset for employers who are looking at apprenticeship because it is renewable. So the SARE program, the tax credit are both to incentivize new hires, new apprentices. Maryland Business Works is ongoing. And so if you were operating, let's say a degree program that had 2, 3, or 4 years, Maryland Business Works can help sustain apprentices' expenses throughout that program for multiple years. You can use it, per cohort. Lastly, down at the bottom, we have a couple of special populations programs that are more tailored towards either a certain group or a certain occupation, one of which is specific to law enforcement. That's actually expanding to now also include things like fire and EMS. But the other is the Fostering Employment Program, which is meant to assist both youth and adults who either are in, aging out of, or were in Maryland's foster care system. So we have funding to provide up to $7,500 of assistance for those individuals. This has been an exceptionally challenging program for us to administer and get the word out for, because we can't legally collect that information as far as someone's status as being, in or formerly in foster care. But if you are, working with that population, if you're working with an organization who works with that population, this is a really, really great program to take advantage of. And, we can help you figure out how to apply those funds, but we can't do the proactive outreach. We have to hear from you and from your employees. So that's kind of our gist of assistance programs there, and I'm happy to take questions later on. But my last slide I have is just a couple of really quick QR codes, if anyone has a phone with them. The first QR code takes you to the Maryland Apprenticeship Locator. This is a page on our website where you can see currently active apprenticeship programs that are recruiting apprentices across the state. So this is not wholly reflective of all the programs we have out there. There's currently about 250 active apprenticeships. There's maybe 200 listed here in the locator, but all these ones that are listed are ones that are looking for apprentices. And it is a good way to kind of see, what's around you, what's in your community, and a great tool to refer people to if you do have workers, job seekers, people in your family that are considering apprenticeship opportunities. The second link there, that red button, is going to be the application to get started in the process of creating a youth apprenticeship. So if you are looking to work specifically with Maryland's high schools and working to employ high school students, that's the Apprenticeship Maryland program, or AMP. This QR code, this link, will take you to a really short, really easy application that collects some information about your business, collects some information about your occupation, and this routes directly to one of our apprenticeship navigators. So if you fill out this form, someone will contact you in about 2 days. And we'll kind of start the process of seeing, are you looking to work with a certain school? Where are you in the state? What are your needs? What are you trying to do? This is a great intake form for that process. So feel free to take advantage of either of those. Feel free to reach out to our staff here. Again, a lot of their emails are in the chat. We do have a full list available on our website as well. And I'm happy to be here today to take any questions you all might have about apprenticeship in Maryland. So thanks again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Logan. And I do just want to give a nice shout out to you and our DOL navigators. You really helped us process for everybody, help them to understand what the process is, and you make it easy. So just thank you for all of the resources that you've provided along the way, and for the MSDE's partnership with you all to really, again, create this comprehensive and collaborative ecosystem. So let's go ahead and hear from Alicia from Baltimore County Public Schools, and then we'll hear from Bronwyn to talk about Howard Community
Thanks,
College.
Edna. So my name is Alicia Fales. I'm a supervisor in the Office of Career and Technical Education, where my responsibilities include all work-based learning. I've been working in work-based learning for a long time, but it's been really exciting to build out the Youth Apprenticeship Program. We're in our 4th year of implementation of We've just completed our 4th year of implementation of the Youth Apprenticeship Program in Baltimore County. And we had our first childcare youth apprentices graduate this year. And I'm very proud to report that several of them have been hired on to continue on employment with the childcare providers after graduation. So Edna, you wanted me to talk a little bit about recruitment. So I'll start with the recruitment of students. One of the requirements of blueprints moving forward is that we're implementing a career navigation or career coaching program for students. And through that program, we're working with them with interest inventories, providing guest speakers, career development opportunities for all students in high school, especially to look at where their interests lie and to expose them to different career options. So then working with them will, if we have students who are interested in the childcare, would be a good fit for the childcare industry, then we're going to talk with them about what that pathway looks like, which may result in them participating in a youth apprenticeship program. So again, we want to find what's a good fit for them, and then we support them into starting that program. And as we've discussed, it's important, we can't place an apprentice if we don't have a place to place them. So the other side of our work, of course, is recruiting employers to participate. And we've been doing that through, you can see our piece on the screen there, monthly webinars where it's just a general webinar for any interested employers to come and learn about our processes. But I've also been going out to meet with childcare providers through professional associations and those sorts of things to share information about youth apprenticeship options. This allows you to begin working with students who are 16 to 18. Generally, our students are finishing up their junior year, and we move them. They may take their related instruction during their junior year, and then we move them into a youth apprenticeship in the summer after junior year, and they continue during their senior year, which for childcare providers meets a need of that push for the summer increase of school age students who are coming in. And our apprentices can often get a taste of the career field and begin their apprenticeships through camps and those sorts of things. We have a work-based learning coordinator attached to every high school. And the work-based learning coordinators are also working to build that outreach and recruit employers and bring them in. We've had great relationships with many employers for years for our internship programs, and they've supported our advisory councils for our programs. And so we work then to convert them from internships over to apprenticeships, if that would be a good pathway for them and for the students who are involved. We're also working with our workforce development group to connect to employers in the area. And as Logan mentioned, our Department of Labor navigators are extremely valuable in this process. They work with employers who are interested to complete that application, get that packet ready to go to MATSE. They make it a pretty simple and seamless process if this is really what you're interested in doing. And they'll work through all the details of that and connect to the school system, and we'll make sure that package is ready to go to MATSE to make sure that approval is a smooth process. Our students who participate, they have to have the related instruction. It's 1 credit of related instruction and then 3 credits or 450 hours of work-based learning. And for that related instruction, if we can provide it in Baltimore County Public Schools, what we've been using is our child development course, which is connected to our Teacher Academy of Maryland program. And there's also a curriculum and instruction course. So our students have had that basic level of training in child development, curriculum and instruction before they come out for the 450 hours. We are also offering the Parapro exam as a certification for them. And so some of our students may have had that experience. We've also partnered with CCBC, the Community College of Baltimore County, to connect into their courses. And so some of our apprentices are taking the first class at CCBC toward their 90-hour or toward their CDA, or a course that they could apply to their associates in teaching also, which gives them the background that they need then to do those 450 hours. And then, of course, we hope that they're going to continue their coursework after graduation and hope that they will continue in employment after graduation. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alicia. And, I just really admire the way that you all are creating these career paths for students and helping them to not only get exposed to careers, but also to become employees. That's really fantastic. And I know that you have a very well-run program, and just about all of the schools in the state have a childcare CTE or apprenticeship program. I also love the flexibility about converting those internships to apprenticeships. Well done. Bronwyn, we will listen to some of your experiences and lessons learned at Howard. And then if you have any questions in the chat, please, please put them in the chat and we'll touch on a couple of those before we close. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to keep it brief since we are short on time here and I want people to be able to ask questions. So our program was launched, our apprenticeship program was launched in the fall of 2023. And it was hard work on a collaborative work process between, I'm on a phone, so I have it held up to my face right now to make sure you can hear me. It was a collaborative process between our credit and our non-credit departments. It's a hybrid class where we work to articulate not only for apprenticeship students, for any students that are taking coursework with us, so they can get credit for the infant and toddler, preschool, and school age, and our child care administration coursework. So if they enter in the non-credit sphere wanting to get in the workforce and then they want to transition into an AA degree program, they can do that through that work that we completed actually in 2020 and 2021. If you would like to go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. So we were awarded funds over the last year and a half that allowed us to kick off our apprenticeship program. We were able to pay for apprenticeship wages and the tuition over the last year and a half for not only our apprenticeship students, but our credit students as well. And we were also able to build in micro barrier grant removal stipends for that program, and do a lot of wraparound services that we wouldn't normally otherwise be able to do to ensure the apprentices were successful over the last year and a half of this process. And so right now we currently have 25 apprentices that are underway. Our first graduate of that seed funding is going to happen at the end of this fall coming up. So we've been very successful in the program. Can you go to the next slide, please? At the end of their programming, they are eligible to be lead teachers in all age groups. They're also able to be a director if they have the appropriate degree requirements met. And they're also eligible to sit for the CDA, because we're also partnering with Head Start programming through the CAC of Howard County, which is our Head Start provider for Howard County. And so it was important that we had the CDA built into our programming to meet the needs of that organization. They also graduate with a 32 credit career certificate through our credit program. And as you see here, there's 2 course numbers where the classes are the hybrid of both non-credit or credit coursework that I just referred to earlier. And then I'm proud to say, along the lines of the AMP program, Howard County just got their own AMP program approved based on our childcare professional program. So we do have 2 youth apprentices that will be starting this coming fall, and we're excited for that program to get launched as well. And there'll be a wonderful pipeline for our high schools into our apprenticeship program. So excited for that. And I will end there just so that people have time to ask some questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Bronwyn. And, and I also love that you are creating that bridge with the youth apprenticeship program. So that's fantastic. And I think that, again, talking about what your community college and Hartford are offering is just fantastic, because they're state-based programs. So there's a lot of opportunity there for participants that are interested in these careers at any age, youth and adults. So I don't see any questions in the chat. We have a few minutes. But so let me just ask again.
There's a question.
Oh,
There's a question.
Sorry.
Just popped in. All right. I had to close it to see that. All right. There we go. All right. How large are the populations of apprentices your programs are working with, and the number of employers and number of students?
So I go quickly first. I have to leave very quickly. At the total number of apprentices we have right now is, I want to say 36 or 37, combining all cohorts, basically. The number of employees, at least 15 or 20, again, across the state, basically. And those include small and large childcare centers. So it's very diverse, like the field.
Indeed.
I'm working with 9 different employers currently, with some others coming on board. And we, like I stated, have 25 active apprentices, but we're also still actively recruiting.
Thank you. Alicia?
Sorry. We have about 9 early childhood employers on board. We're working to looking for kids to put into all those placements and every slot that we have available. Again, we have the high school population, so it's a matter of looking at that population and seeing where their interests lie, and who rises to this opportunity. So I can't give you a number there other than the number of employer,
Perfect. So we have one more question, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. And that is, what challenges did you run into getting employers to commit? So we've heard some strategies around making it easier and streamlining, guiding, shepherding, advising. So anybody want to talk about any particular challenges and even how you overcame them?
I feel like the employer part was actually very easy for us since we had so much grant funding. So the employers were the easier part, and then the recruitment for actual apprentices was a bit more difficult, just because we've seen a decrease of educators entering the field, generally speaking. So that was more of a challenge really than the employer piece. One thing that is kind of it would be remiss not to mention is that it is a financial commitment, at least after the grant funds end. And so having employers buy in for that part is probably the biggest challenge, but we apply to a lot of the funds that Logan outlined in his presentation on behalf of our employers to make sure that it's sustainable, and we'll continue applying for additional grants as they arise as well. And there's a secondary question about youth and registered apprentices. There's 25 registered apprentice adults and then 2 youth apprentices that will be going into our program. I think that's a clarifying question there. So.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else care to share challenges? All right. Well, thank you all. I just want to thank this distinguished and expert panel today. You were really wonderful, and I think that you painted a very hopeful and optimistic picture around opportunities for youth and adults in the childcare sector, as well as being, and you know, I think as Tony put it, keeping it real around the challenges that we do face with critical workforce gaps and how that impacts our not only our entire economy for our state, but also communities and families. So we really want to make sure that we provided a good introduction to the apprenticeship model, whether it's a youth apprenticeship at the high school level, a school to apprenticeship program that begins in high school and continues to bridge to the community college and beyond, and then our registered apprenticeship programs in community colleges and other organizations that are really helping to shore up these critical workforce gaps. I will be providing the slides and recording of the webinar to all people who registered, and we just really appreciate your interest. I just want to say thank you to everybody in the apprenticeship ecosystem who's on this call, on this webinar, because we need every single one of you and your respective areas of expertise to make this work and to really create the collaborative apprenticeship ecosystem we're striving for through the blueprint. And really, it's really about building the talent pipeline and having a steady stream of skilled workers in our state. So thank you for your attention today. And oh, you put the slide up there with my contact information, even though I put it in the chat. So
There we go.
there you go. All right. Almost to the end. Ta-da! All right, and we've got a couple of areas on our website for MAC called Apprentice Connect for employers, parents, and students. And we have a media resource library that has been compiled with the help of our LEAs, our workforce development, and Department of Labor partners. And at the bottom, you have my email address. So thank you so much for your time today. And just keep doing what you're doing, working in the system. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.